I appreciate all of you hanging out with us. I hope that you are having a fantastic Tuesday. Wherever you may be, I know that if you are a Raider fan, you are, in fact, having a fantastic Tuesday. We talked to Danny G about that a little bit earlier. He's 2-0. His team's 2-0. My team's 2-0. There are 11 2-0 teams right now as we finish the 11th week of the second week of the NFL season. There are 11 teams that are 2-0. And what's fascinating about this is from the perspective of making the playoffs, and the numbers are probably even better now because we're expanding to 7 playoff teams in the AFC and 7 in the NFC. 61.3% of teams are going to make the playoffs historically since 1990 when they start off 2-0. Only 12.6% of teams make the playoffs when they start off 0-2. Now, that wasn't a big swing last night. We had 2 teams that had already started off 1-0, but I'm actually intrigued now to see how the Raiders are going to look going on the road against the Patriots, because this team, I thought now, as they get ready for another year of John Gruden, is starting to come around a little bit more and have some horses, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. I love Josh Jacobs. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL. I really do believe that. Also, Darren Waller is developing into one of the best tight ends out there. Yesterday, we talked with Todd Furman, and I've said this before, but we're in a high-end fantasy football league. Big buy-in. There are 12 of us in the league, and Furman reached out to me yesterday before the game with the Raiders and the Saints, and he said, "Hey, I've got a lot of talent at wide receiver. You've got a bunch of tight ends. Would you be interested in potentially trading with me?" And I was texting with him last night during the game, and I was like, at every quarter, I was like, "Hey, my asking price is going up if I'm going to decide to move this guy," because I got Jonnu Smith as well. I've got a pretty good team. I got a bunch of tight ends on the roster. And I was getting made fun of for drafting like 3 or 4 tight ends because I was thinking, hey, I want to have some depth, and there's decent depth at tight end right now. And so Darren Waller was fantastic. Henry Ruggs hasn't put it all together yet, but he's so fast, that 4.27 speed, that you could see at the end of the game when the Raiders decided to go deep on that 3rd down and 5 pass play, that there was just nervousness from the Saints, even though they didn't necessarily need to be nervous. The throw, even still, from Derek Carr managed to be too far for Henry Ruggs to make a play on. But you could see, I think it was Malcolm Jenkins, was just so nervous about the idea of Henry Ruggs running right by him that he grabbed him a little bit. Now, I think you can argue that that wasn't the pass interference call, and that certainly was the argument that Sean Payton was trying to make. But I think in the grand scheme of things, that would probably get called most of the time. And it was just because he held his arm for so long as he ran down the sideline. But you think about Henry Ruggs being able to take the top off a defense. You think about Darren Waller being able to get open over the middle. The play-action game is going to be a legit threat with Josh Jacobs at running back. And then you start to piece all those different aspects together, the Hunter Renfrows of the world who can make plays as well. It was a decent offense. And we know that the Saints have had historically a very good defense, and the Saints really didn't have much of a chance of stopping the Raiders. Saints got out to a 10-0 lead, but looked a little wobbly doing it, and then the Raiders just came in and took complete control. And they effectively dominated down the stretch of this game, put it away, and then made what I thought was a little bit of a risky move, deciding to kick with Carlson. Dub, I know you're a gambler like I am. We were both on the Raiders. Were you sitting there watching this saying, no, go ahead and punt deep, make them go 90 yards in a minute? Because I had visions of either a missed field goal or a blocked kick, and then Drew Brees only having to go 50 yards down the field. I don't know what the analytics experts would say. Maybe the play is the right one that Gruden made, because if you make a field goal from that distance with that kicker, the game is over, and there's no more risk factors involved with it at all. But I'm not going to lie. From a gambling perspective, I was sitting there saying punt, punt, punt.
Yeah, I'm with you. And there was a couple instances in last night's game where the Raiders, kind of got away with shooting themselves in the foot. There was the goal line. Jacobs tried to leap over the top. He bobbled the ball. He was able to get it back. And then on the very next play, on the snap exchange, the ball's on the ground. They get it back again and then score to Waller on 4th and goal. So we dodged a bullet there, first of all. So I'm already got the bad beat vibe juju going on in my head. And I went to Auburn, and I watched Daniel Carlson kick at Auburn, and he is a great kicker, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I've seen Gus Malzahn trot out Daniel Carlson for a 55-yard field goal or whatever it is countless times, and I've just been burned by it plenty of times. So in my head, I was thinking, okay, here we go again. They're going to kick it, and lo and behold, though, he split the uprights right down the middle. There was never really a doubt. So props to John Gruden for having faith in his kicker, and a kicker who, if we remember, has bounced around a little bit since he came into the league. He's found a home in Vegas, and it looks like he's on the right track.
I'm on a hot streak right now gambling. I gave out 6 picks. I'm going to try to do a 6-pack every Friday for the NFL. Maybe I'll do it on Thursday for the NFL since I do my college football gambling picks usually on Friday as we roll into the weekend. And so maybe I'll do it on Thursday. But I went 5-1 in those that I gave out to you over the weekend and then won again last night. And now I'm nervous because I'm posting my picks for the first weekend in college football on Wednesday. I don't know about you, Dub, but I look at the college football slate, and I'm already starting to bet it. But it's so hard to predict what's going to happen in college football, it feels like to me, because college football has been way more impacted so far by, missed players, COVID-related concerns. I feel like in college football in general, the home crowd matters so much more. And so I look at all these matchups, and I'm like, man, this is a more difficult gambling universe than maybe what I'm used to, whereas the NFL seems like much more of an efficient market. I feel like you can find lines that you love in college football, but it's harder to do that this year because of all the craziness.
Yeah, I feel like this year, information is by far the biggest factor when trying to play some of these college bets, because I saw on Twitter yesterday, Virginia Tech coach Fuente, he was talking about his upcoming game against NC State. And he flat out said, I hope we're even able to play. That's how much concerns they have. So,
right.
the first thing I did is I went to my book. I looked at it. NC State was +9, and I took it. Because either they're going to have way less kids that aren't playing than that usually will, and it'll be a big advantage for NC State, or it's going to be a fair line. So I figured, why not lock in the +8? So that's the only play I have right now. But in terms of my other plays, usually I like to get them in early in the week. But now, I feel like I have to wait till about an hour before kickoff and go from there.
Yeah, and, we talked about this a little bit with Joel Klatt on the Monday edition of the program, but what's wild about college football, because Joel, remember, was on the road. He had already arrived at his situation there to be ready for the game. He was at Baylor, and suddenly they come in 30 minutes late for the meeting, and he told that story yesterday about how they ended up missing that game, right? They don't find out till they're already flown from California to Waco, and they're sitting there ready to do the game. And so as you kind of project going forward, that's going to be, I think, occurring every now and then. And it's why, honestly, I think it's so important that the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC have got weeks built into their schedule so that if they don't end up playing that week, they have the ability to reschedule it. Whereas the Big Ten and the Pac-12, if they end up playing, there are so many different things that can go wrong that it's going to be a challenge for them to get it all in.
Yeah, I think having those windows in the SEC where they have room for error, I think is going to be huge. And the Big Ten and other conferences, they just simply don't have that. So we might see a situation where the Big Ten winner, maybe it's Ohio State, maybe they're 6-0, which you and Joel kind of mentioned yesterday.
Yeah, and it puts a premium, obviously, on games like Ohio State at Penn State in terms of their overall impact. And I also wonder how committed the bad teams are going to be to making sure that they play all their games. And so let's pretend you're Illinois, or let's pretend you're Rutgers, and you're not expected to be very good. Well, you can come into the first 2 or 3 games like, oh, we're going to prove everybody wrong. But by the time you get to Game 5, by the time you get to Game 6, how many guys are going to be fully committed to wanting to play? I think that's an interesting and intriguing challenge. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about that very factor, what's going on in the Pac-12 and more. Also, what's going on with the Lakers. What do we expect coming out of the Chargers situation, given how good Justin Herbert looked? and many more topics for our buddy Petros Papadakis from AM 570 LA Sports, the Petros and Money Show. He joins us every single Tuesday in the second segment of the hour.